lost my voice. But thanks so much for that. Thanks so much, Robert, for all you do. And I can remember when your father and your mother and Sylvia and I were playing cards in the house that you had right next to what was the Bluebell Inn on Skipback Pike. As we were playing cards there that night, Dolores leaned over and said to Walt, "You know, Walt, I think it's time." Well, I said to Sylvia, I think we better get going. Well, anyway, that was the night that you knew, I knew Bob King just before he was even born. I also want to honor his father, too, because it was an unusual story in those days, because a gunman went in the Ambler National Bank. I know because of all the mergers, you may not have remembered that. And he pulled a gun, and he took the money, and they gave it to him, and he went out of the bank. But Walter chased the man out the door and said, "That's not your money." He chased him out there and down Spring Garden Street and out towards the railroad tracks, and then others came in on that, and they subdued the bank robber. So that's a real tribute to you, Walter, and we honor you for that as well. I want to honor other people too, because Rotary is not just one person, it's a lot of people. Worldwide, it's 1,200,000 people in 34,000 clubs. But in this club, we've had a lot of past presidents who have provided leadership. And all of the leadership has been directed towards building a better community. And I want to tell you, too, that I do appreciate Mike Smith, because he wanted to remind me that we have to close at 1:30. And once I get wound up, I can keep going. So I do have this, Mike, and I appreciate that. But anyway, all of the presidents have brought leadership to this club, and all the members have responded with the same effort to try and build a better community. What is it that we can do to be a better community? And that's not at all unusual, because, well, throughout the years, books such as Plato's Republic, Sir Thomas More's Utopia, and James Hilton's Lost Horizons are all variations of this very same theme. That people want to live in a community where they have the ability to solve the problems that confront them, and those things, those issues that concern them. But where else, no place else, is there an organization like Rotary where we can find that all of these people all over the world can bring stability and even perhaps civility to the problems that are confronting us. There are 3,700 different ethnic groups in the world today. And those ethnic groups all have pretty much their own lifestyle and even their own language. And you know, we only have 200 countries into which to fit them. So there has to be, if we're going to have peace through service, a faith in the ability of one person to get along with another. And that is what Rotary has been all about for all of these years. And as Rotary has been in the lives of so many people around the world, it has been something that has brought this kind of civility to the communities in which they reside. And we like that. And we need that in a world that's so troubled today. I've had that problem because I started out as a correspondent. That was really my first job, and they said, go to Africa and do stories on kids and their education. Well, I did. And I went to Liberia and across the desert to the northern part of Nigeria, Kano, the Hausa tribe. At that time, I called them Arab traders because that was their principal business. But in Kano, we have found today that there have become so many in the 6 provinces in the northern part of Nigeria, and now really the whole country is within Shiri law. And it has become something that has been troublesome. I was at Lagos and then up to Ibadan, where they have the first national university in Nigeria. And the person at the Lagos Times who I met when I walked into the office, and he helped me, and I asked him information, and he was able to get me out to Ibadan. And I told him that I really wanted to do something for him, brought him back here, and offered him an education, and got the 4 years. In the 3rd year, he became Phi Beta Kappa. That's 3.8 grade average. And yet he lived in a house with 50 others in a steel-framed house. But Rotary was trying to do something even at that time. And then on to Nigeria, on to the Gold Coast, which is today called Ghana, and then on to Liberia, when I got a call and said you had to come back to Washington, that we're in need of more people to cover the Pentagon. So I went to Washington. But in the experiences that I had there, I knew that there was something that was important in the lives of all of these people. And it was community. And community was something that was important to all of those people who wanted to be able to solve their problems. I knew that they had to be informed about what the problems are, and so that's why I thought newspapers were important to them, or other ways of information. But the world, when I'm going to say Walter and I were born in 1927, the world population was 2 billion. It was up from 1 billion in 1814, and it was now then in 1927 up to 2 billion. Today it's approaching 7 billion people. And we've got to find the resources to keep them alive and to keep peacefulness there by having people take care of their needs in some way. So the problems have become even more important. But I wanted to know that we could do something more meaningful. And so when Joe Haywood, one of the Haywood family, had the Amber Gazette, but he graduated from MIT, and all he wanted to do was just work on the linotype machine and the presses in the back. And so I worked out a deal, sat on the porch in April of 1952 at the Forest Inn, and we bought the Amber Gazette, just the title, but not the building. And so then we began to realize that, and I wanted to show people and introduce myself to them. And so on the front page I had an editorial, and it read something like this as my message and my words that wanted to go to the people on June 26th of 1952. With a continuing interest in the progress and welfare of the community and a sober sense of responsibility, the Gazette will work with the individuals, the groups, and the organizations of the community to continue to develop the enlightened and inspired unity on which our future as a growing and prosperous community so largely depends. I was pleased then, later in that year, that Alex Knight, son of Judge Knight, and at the what was called Folk Knight and Porter, that was the beginning of the Timony firm. But anyway, Alex came across the street on Butler Avenue from their office and asked if I would go to lunch with him. At that time, we didn't announce that people were going to become members of the club, so all of that paperwork had been done. And so on October the 15th of 1952, Alex and I went 2 doors away to Niblock's restaurant. And we went in turned to the left on those short stairs that could only accommodate one person, and went up to the second floor. He bought me my lunch, and I appreciate that. And then Joe Hess, the president at that time, gave me a pin. And he said, "You are now a member of Rotary." I appreciated that. I felt that was a precious moment. But I knew, too, that becoming a member is one thing, but becoming a committed member was another thing. And it was some time that we had to try and in some way build a better community. One of the first things it did, by gathering people together and talked about it, and there were only a few of us at Broad Axe after a Chamber of Commerce meeting, and talked about the parking problems that we had in Ambler, and we had to do something. Well, we raised at that time $4,000 and thought that was going to get a start for it as a down payment. And I'm thinking, Bill, it was Ishuff's property between the church, between the church and the Wyndham Hotel, and all of that green grass in there and so forth, that we somehow thought we could make an offer and buy it. Well, we got it for $75,000, but at that time, the borough then stepped in because they had the problem too, and really they put up the big chunk of the money, but the seed money, though, was private. And we got that going. And that was set then with stores on the front. We started with Jim Cassidy's office and went over to, I was going to say Ambler Drug was in there, and then Ambler Fashion Shop too. Sid Kornblad helped us on all of that with the stores in the front. Well, that was the framework of a first project. But then it came that we needed more, and we decided too that there would be some way that we could stretch Race Street on around back to Butler Avenue. Well, it so happened that I was president of the Ambler Library as well, and in the library we were meeting in the Colony Club, and we had all of the books, and the librarians would say, "We just don't have any more room." Well, that would be something that we could get started with. So by providing $5,000, we were on our way as the Rotary Club to try and move that along, and the project for the Ambler Library was $110,000. But then by that time, the Rotary Club had moved from Niblock's to Forest Inn. My, what an uproar at the meeting when they suggested we had to do that. Forest Inn, we're going to lose our members. And I will tell you that we had 85 members. And I'm going to say we're not much over that right now in 85. And that was 60 years ago. We're not much more. But anyway, we were at Forest Inn, and there was a long argument at the time that centered around the idea that we had picked, I think it was Reeves out of Jenkintown, to build it, and they couldn't have somebody from outside the community to build that library. So we wanted to have Frank Pierce do it, and so Frank Pierce did it, but Jim Riddle kicked in the difference between the two bids, and so we felt maybe we could do it and give it to have a local contractor, and so we did that. But that was important too. But not only that, but then the fire company too. And then Bill Weir and his father, and they built their building there too. And then Mrs. Haas on the Visiting Nurses Association came through and built that building there on Race Street. But then the real development came when the Ambler Savings and Loan, which was in a, I'm going to say a storefront actually, it might have been a little larger than that, but not much, on Butler Avenue. And they came through, and it gave us more parking space, and they got their new building and so forth, but Honey Run was covered. And we took care of that stream that ran through there. So, Dan, I want you to know if you dig deep, you'll get water on your feet. But it was a real movement on that. But there have been other developments But understand here that the thread of service has been inextricably woven into the fabric of the Ambler Rotary Club. And we have found that there has been that kind of service. And then later on we got a cardiac unit for the ambulance, and I think, Dan, you had the ground on that. And my remembrance was that that whole cardiac unit today would cost some over $100,000, was about, what, $10,000? And everybody came together on that. But again, it was the community working together. And then later on, Hunt Weber got a number of people together, Phil Albright, Mark Waltz, and so forth, and we had a golf outing. And raised someplace around $70,000 plus. And the ambulance unit was going to build a new building on extended Butler Avenue. And so all of that again was a service project that came along. And I think if you're looking for good projects, you ought to talk to Hunt. He's retired and doesn't have anything. And I think he would run another golf outing, and I think that would be so good. And $70,000 is a lot of money even today. So we do those things, but again, it was because of service in Rotary, service among ourselves. The theme of Rotary this year, I will say too, that the Saga, which was the Senior Adult Citizen group, and that actually was started, and we got that started, and Sylvia became the first president of that, and Bill McAuliffe, I think, was second president of that, and really gave it a shot in the arm, and moved it along very well. And I remember that, Bill, and we thank you for all of that. We thank everybody. But anyway, all of these things were important. But in 1961, I am watching the watch, Mike. But in 1961, I was asked to be on a mission that went out to Vietnam. We stopped to talk to Chiang Kai-shek and Madam Chiang, and I guess I looked young for some reason or other at that time. And I said, you know, we've just had a political debate, and they asked in the debate, how important was Kamui and Matsu? And she interrupted, hadn't said a word during about 20 minutes of that conversation with Chiang. And she said, my dear boy, you're talking about the eyes and ears of the free world. Well, anyway, we went on from there. Well, she went out, she wanted me to go to the airport the next day myself, and I met and got on a DC-3, and they flew me over there, and I got up close to China, and I said, you know, aren't we getting awfully close, because I understood about all the firing that was going on between the weapons of China and the Taiwanese, who continued their fight at the time. And I said, aren't we getting awfully close? He says, this is an off day. Every other day they organized it, and so when I got there, the kids were going to school, and the men were meeting in their club meetings, and so forth. Everything went on in a natural way, every other day. So that was an important part of that understanding that the world has a lot to offer each of us. But the real time came, and then I went on and talked to Lee Kuan Yew, who had just broken away from Manila, Pot Sarensen in Bangkok, and had an interesting chat while I was waiting for Nehru. We were going to wait, several of us were going to wait and talk to Nehru, who was the Prime Minister of India, and she said my father, Indira Gandhi, was the daughter, and later became the Prime Minister. But we sat on the bottom steps there, and she said, what kind of a family do you have? And I said, we have 3 boys. We didn't have Barbara yet at the time. And I said, we have 3 boys. She said, I have 2. What's it like to raise boys in the United States? Well, I can't tell you here because 2 of those boys are here. No, but I said it's always one of those things that you do what they want you to do, and it's pretty much like that. But anyway, we talked about that, and then later talked to Nehru. But then it came in 1969. I can't miss, though, of course, in 1964, John Hansel became the district governor. And we had a great time at the Traymore Hotel, Bill. Can you remember all those days?
13 months I lived with you to get that thing off.
But you know, you have to admit, though, that it's a great activity and brings the club together in a great way. And I was hoping that this year we might very well have had that kind of an opportunity. It really brings your club together. But all of this, though, in making it up there, and because they had a contest between, and this was 1969, between George Hardwick and Tom Timoney at the Springfield Club on attendance. Who could have the better attendance for the month of November? So I had to make it. And I had to tell you that I was up the Mekong River in Vietnam. Even forgot the name. But I came up and got a helicopter and went up to the Tan Son Nhut Air Base there in Saigon. Got a car that would drive me down to the Continental Hotel where they met, and met there. And I'm sorry, this is ladies' night, he said, but come back tonight at 6 o'clock, and we have ladies' night. I said, could I have a makeup card, though? So I did get that. I did makeup in Delhi. They started out at 6 o'clock, and at 10 o'clock that night, I was still listening to the arguments about whether they should meet at noon to accommodate more of the business people. Or should they do what? And could somebody talk to the chef about the food? So that went on. I met in Tehran then, and then in Tehran the Rotary Club was so good. And I'm so pleased about that. And they offered me to go up to the head table, but I didn't say anything more than hi. But it was a Ramadan. And they sat there without any eating and without drinking any water. And we just sat there for about a half an hour, and then the program began, just like a regular Rotary Club. I met in Istanbul, and they talked about the funds. Turkish funds could not go into the Rotary Foundation, and because it was outside the country, and all the currency had to be kept there. So anyway, all I really wanted to say was on that Rotary is truly a global experience, and that we have all of these clubs and all of these people all over the world who are really, really doing something to build better communities. In Karachi, they were working on an eye clinic because one of them was either an optician, ophthalmologist, or whatever, but he was driving that project there. But they're working on that. And that is what means so much in Rotary experience. And we know that that peace can be. And we have so many similarities around the world in our lifestyles on that regard. And there is a chance for peace through service. And that's the motto for this year in Rotary. And that's what's so important, that we do contribute to that. Remember that I said that you can not only just join Rotary, you have to be a participant in Rotary. You have to be a committed Rotarian. And that means that you have a willingness to work, a seriousness of purpose, and a genuine interest in other people. All of that is a part of Rotary. That's a part of the human experience, and that's a part of our lives here. And I know that as we see all of these similarities around the world, it brings home a song. And don't worry, Mark, I'm not going to sing it. That it is a small world after all. And it's a world of laughter, and a world of tears, and a world of fears. And it makes us so much aware that it is a small world after all. I thank all of you just for being here today And I appreciate the fact that it has been 60 years of membership in the Ambler Rotary Club. And I really thank you for being patient with me and tolerating me. But it's been fun, and it's been a good experience. And I like this club now because, I liked it all the time, but I like it now particularly because of the younger people that are coming in, and it's the younger people who now have to carry it forward and make Rotary live in your own community, in the Ambler community, in the district, and in the whole experience of Rotary International. Thank you so much for being here.
I don't know how many of you know this, that Bill did not have one piece of written material other than that little editorial that he wrote. So that's just amazing. I mean, I just shows what kind of guy he is. We have one more presentation. I'd like to invite Tony Janetta up to the podium, please.
But I want you to know that I've prepared 60 years for the talk today. And you know, I'm growing older. I'm growing older, and we don't like the consequences of being old.
Bill, I have a question for you. You said we have so many different cultures, and you're such a wise man. Now, I'm Scottish, and I come here and I go to many other clubs, but they have a problem understanding me. Will you come with me every time It's quite an honour for me, and as it is for many of us here today, as we listen to what Bill has just said to us, and it's very inspiring to us all. But I want to read something to you I have in my hand, and I want you to listen to the words, because you'll almost think that Bill had seen this before I read it, and it's really quite fitting. I hope you understand me. It says, "Dear Bill, it is a great pleasure to congratulate you on your 60th anniversary as a Rotarian. This milestone is reflected of your personal dedication to Rotary, as well as the satisfaction that you have found through Rotary service. I firmly believe that through service, each of us can achieve a happier, more meaningful life. In Rotary, we are able to reach out to others, to be useful to others, to gain a deeper understanding of ourselves. The length of service speaks the depth of your commitment, and I am glad that we have Rotarians such as yourselves among our ranks. I send you these congratulations on this anniversary, my best wishes for a year of peace through service. Yours in Rotary, Sakuji Tanaka, President of Rotary International." Oh.